Hey, Steve Stine from Guitar Zoom here, and today what I'd like to do is help you with a really important tip that can make your chord changes a lot easier and a lot faster if you practice it. Now, when I first started learning how to play chords, and it doesn't matter whether you're working on open chords or bar chords or whatever it might be, the thing that I always used to do incorrectly was I would learn a chord, like let's say G for instance, and then I would practice strumming it. I would make the chord and I would strum it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is I'm doing. But the problem was I wasn't really thinking about the fact that what I needed to do not only from a strumming perspective, developing my strumming, but I also needed to work on developing muscle memory in my hand as I played. So if I just made the chord and strummed it, it was helping me a lot with my strumming, but it wasn't really doing much for my chording hand, my fretting hand. So what I started learning how to do was a technique that I call bouncing. And what that is when you make a chord, let's just say you're making G. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're making G the same way I am, but if you're making G, instead of just making the chord and then strumming it, what you do is you don't strum at all and you just practice bouncing this chord. And the way you do that is you simply make the chord, and then you kind of pretend like your fingers are super glued into this position. Now think about where your elbow is and your shoulder. Think about a comfortable position that all of this should be in as you're making that chord. And then practice picking your fingers up like they're super glued together and then setting it back down. And picking it up and setting it back down. So what you want to do is as you pick those fingers up, they don't just go all directions like this, but they maintain that shape. So you pick it up and you set it down, and you pick it up and you set it down, and you do that over and over and over. And it doesn't have to be fast. You don't have to try and do something like this. The goal is just to get your hand to make the shapes that you're looking for, whether they're open chords or bar chords or scales for that matter. I mean, there's all kinds of different things you can do once you've developed muscle memory in whatever capacity you're practicing at, right? So if I want a D, for instance, here's D. I want to be able to pick it up and then set it back down. Pick it up, set it back down. I want to train my hand to do this. And there's two reasons for that. Number one, let's say my hand is on my leg. I'm just going to start playing right now, and I want a D chord. Well, the first problem is I don't want this. I don't want to come up to the guitar and then have to create the chord one by one with my fingers, because chances are I'm going to be late if I'm playing along with the song or playing with other musicians. If I have to do that every time I make a chord, I have to rebuild the chord every single time, I'm going to be late all the time, right? The measure's going to pass me by and I'm still trying to figure out how to make a D chord. So the trick is if you set your hand on your lap and then you go to make that chord, as you lift your hand, you already create the shape that you want, and then you just simply set it down. So if I want a G, there's my G, and I just set it down. Or my C, there's my C, and I set it down. Okay? And the second part of that makes it really nice is once you get comfortable with, let's say, G and D. So you practice bouncing your D chord over and over and over. And this is great because you can do this, while your family is around, you're not going to bother anybody. You don't have to be loud for this. You can use an electric that's not plugged in, or you can see I'm just touching the strings here to keep it silent as I do this. Okay? So it doesn't bother anybody. I can do it anywhere. Okay? So I practice G, and I practice, G, sorry about that, and I practice D back and forth. I'm doing both those chords. Then what I want to start doing is bouncing back and forth, okay? So then what I do is I lift up that chord, I create D, and I set it down. I lift up that chord, I shift over to G, and I set it back down. So this is a great way to practice on a daily basis muscle memory in your fretting hand. Whether you're left or right-handed, it doesn't make any difference. But just doing it over and over and over, learning to separate your rhythm or your picking or whatever you have going on with your picking hand from what's happening with your chording hand. And just practicing that over and over and over. And I guarantee if you do that every day, and again, be patient. Don't just like do it 4 times and then move on. Really get to know that chord. Get to know what it looks like, get to know what it feels like, and get to know how to make that shape through muscle memory. And it's going to help you a lot on your journey. So anyway, take care, practice hard, and I'll talk to you soon.